Hi and welcome to the product review. In this episode I'll be reviewing the Samsung Pebble Bluetooth Mouse. I bought this mouse so that I could have full mouse functionality on my Asus T100 even in tablet mode, as the Asus only has space for a USB wireless transceiver when attached to the keyboard. For your reference, I will be comparing this to my old classic style Logitech Nano mouse. I've had this mouse for about 6 years and I absolutely adore it, having used it almost daily. So the Samsung feels quite a bit larger than the Logitech when they're not next to each other, but when you place them next to each other they're actually quite similar in size. The Logitech Nano is quite comfortable when used on a desk or a hard surface, but it can be quite uncomfortable at times when used on a softer surface. This is probably partly due to the fact that it only really tracks on wood and hard surfaces that aren't glossy. The Samsung, however, feels much more comfortable off of a desk, but feels equally as comfortable on a desk. This is probably due to the fact that the Samsung feels ever so slightly larger in the hand, and partly because the Pebble uses newer technology that allows it to track on a much wider selection of surfaces. The Samsung is insanely light. For its little bit of extra size, it isn't at all bulky and is actually lighter than the Nano, which I honestly found quite surprising. The Samsung is quite a bit more comfortable to hold, at least in my hands, but they are rather large. To me, the Pebble feels more like a normal mouse, whereas the Nano feels a bit more like a laptop mouse and requires a little bit of crab clawing to hold. Not to an insane degree like some of the really small mice that I've used in the past. Somewhere in the house we've got a mouse that's about 2 fingers wide and about that long, and you really have to sort of move it around like that, and it's ridiculous. Nano, on the other hand, does require a little bit of a hand curved position, but it's not particularly uncomfortable. The Samsung, however, might not look too different, but actually feels much more comfortable in the hand for me. The Samsung has a standard 3-button layout with nice big left and right click buttons. It has a good sized but slightly small scroll wheel, which acts as a middle click and has a nice sounding scroll. I will say, however, that the scroll feels more akin to a cheap OEM style mouse that you would get free with your desktop computer. But I would also say that it's on the higher end scale of this sort of mouse. The Nano, on the other hand, has no middle click button on its scroll wheel, but does come with 3 nice little buttons you can program if you install the setpoint drivers. By default, these are forward and back browser buttons, and a Windows selection button has slowly over the years been set to default as the middle click button. I always found it awkward to press this button, and given that I never use mouse shortcuts for internet browsing, I personally set the forward button to middle click. This suits me well for 3D video and image manipulation programs. That said, the buttons on the Pebble work just fine, and 3 buttons is usually more than enough. The buttons are made from a single glossy piece of plastic. The sides are made of a soft rubber-like plastic material with grooves in, which I suspect is partly for grip, but mainly to accentuate the pebble-like nature of the device. Overall, the device looks a little strange, like it's trying to straddle the line between an Apple and Windows product. That said, I quite like it despite the hideous number of fingerprints that I managed to get on the gloss material. The rubber surface on the Nano started wearing away really quickly and tends to end up with a lot of dead skin residue in it, which is kind of gross. Over the years it's also started perishing, partly because I've been trying to dig out all that horrible gunk. I suspect with the Samsung grooves, because they're bigger and because they're made of a harder material, they'll A, be easier to clean, and B, won't get as much residue in them over time. The Pebble does feel a little cheap, but I suspect that, like the Nano, I'll get a good few years out of it before it even starts going slightly wrong, and that it will prove to be more robust than it looks. My biggest worry would be the scroll wheel, which feels like it might be the weakest point, especially after lots of bag travel. The Samsung takes a single AA battery, which actually came in the box. The Samsung website claims that batteries are sold separately, but the Amazon listing for the product said that it came with one. The mouse supposedly has a 9-month battery life, but as I've only had it about a week, I can't really comment. That said, the Nano takes 2 AAA batteries, and in the 6 years I've had it, I've only really had to change the batteries maybe 5-7 times tops. So given the improvements over the years in low power performance, I don't really doubt the Samsung claim, especially given that AA batteries have a larger capacity than AAAs. The mouse comes with a physically sliding power button which you can keep off during transit. This obviously needs to be switched on before you can connect it to your computer. To connect, you then need to press the soft rubber connect button for about a second while your computer is searching for Bluetooth devices, and it should just turn up. Connection was quite easy, but my only complaint really was that the connect button was a little bit hard to press. I had to use a pen in the end to get the button all the way in. This may be bad design, or it may be a safety feature, I'm not entirely sure. There appears to be no software for this mouse whatsoever. That said, because it's a standard 3-button mouse, you don't really need any software. The Nano by comparison comes with the set point drivers, which allow for full customization of the buttons. Me being me, I feel a little sad that the Pebble isn't very customizable, but then again it really doesn't need it. It's also one less service for Windows to have to run, which will keep the battery life on the tablet going longer. Not that I have any real world use for this, but people running tablets like the Samsung Galaxy Note series may do. And then you come up with the standard pin thingy. 4 zeros as usual. Pairing, and it should connect it to input device. Huzzah! And now, as you can see, as I move my mouse around, the tablet is in actual fact, or the phone is in actual fact using the mouse as a cursor, which is pretty awesome. But again, also kind of completely useful. Useless. So there we go. I mention this because a lot of the cheaper, less than £20 Bluetooth mice don't work with Android. I can't say for certain that this mouse will work on all Android devices. It may just be a Samsung thing where Samsung have made their peripherals much more easy to use on Samsung Android devices. But so far, this seems like one of the few Bluetooth mice that are Android compatible. So huzzah! When I was looking around for a mouse to fulfill my T100 requirements, a lot of them had 1-star reviews, of which most of those were complaining about lack of Android support. So, would I recommend this mouse? I think so. I've not had it very long, but it seems to do the job it does very well. Price-wise, the Bluetooth version is currently £20 to £25 on Amazon. There is also a USB version, and that is slightly cheaper at about £16 to £19. To recap, the Pebble does the job very well in a big hand and travel-friendly form factor, while not weighing very much. This has been a review of the Samsung Pebble Bluetooth Mouse. If you need a Bluetooth mouse for your tablet or computer with no spare USB ports and are happy with 3 buttons, I seriously suggest you consider this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.